Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out a really cool figure from I-Toy. This is actually their second variant of the Dilophosaurus. They did have an initial version, which I have reviewed in the past here on the channel. This is the newest version, although they are actually going to be coming out with yet another Dilophosaurus, but the newest one that we'll be releasing is actually completely resculpted. Doesn't really look like this when it comes complete with a frill and a very Jurassic Park look. This one has a very Jurassic Park style paint scheme and a similar look, but not exactly the same paint scheme as the Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus. There are definitely some differences. However, I am a huge fan of this figure. I have been for a very long time. Ever since the initial version, I've absolutely loved this Dilophosaurus figure. So when I had seen that they were going to be releasing it yet again with a new paint scheme, and especially such a beautiful paint scheme, I really wanted to get a hold of it. Unfortunately, it was one of those figures that there were just so many other figures out that I was consistently trying to get a hold of, and since I had already reviewed this one and I already owned the sculpt, I didn't really spend too much time trying to pick it up. It was always one of those figures that kind of got put onto the back burner, and it's like, I'm going to get it eventually, I'm going to get it, and I just never did. But luckily for me, my good friend Jimmy was recently selling off a lot of his collection, which is unfortunate for him, but it's good for me because he cut me one incredible deal on a lot of really cool stuff, so I was able to finally acquire this gorgeous looking Dilophosaurus. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So as far as this figure goes when it comes to the sculpt, we don't really need to go over the sculpt again because we have reviewed the sculpt in the past. Again, we reviewed this figure initially with the very first version quite a ways back, and again, the sculpt has not changed. The sculpt and the base are exactly the same thing, and I will actually bring in the original release at some point here during this review to compare with this version. What we really need to take a look at is whatever is new with this figure in comparison to the previous one, which is just the paint scheme of the dinosaur. I believe the base itself is exactly the same, but it is an incredible base. It really is. Beautiful wooded area as the Dilophosaurus is walking near some water. And then the overall pose almost feels like something kind of startled the Dilophosaurus. You could see some ripples in the water here. Maybe that's, something had splashed in the water, kind of catching the attention of the Dilophosaurus as it takes kind of a look back over its left shoulder, which I really love. The overall scene that this model portrays, such a cool moment in time that probably happened plenty of times at some point when this dinosaur was alive. But again, as far as the paintwork goes on this Dilophosaurus, you can see some really gorgeous coloration here to the head of the Dilophosaurus. Some really nice tones of red up there in the crest, and almost like a heart-like appearance, it seems, in the crest as far as the design goes. You can see some nice blacks and whites included with that red in the crest area. Beautiful, flashy-looking crest for sure as far as the figure goes. You can see some more of that red kind of trail down into the palate area, so we have a little bit of red in the face as well. You also have some nice blackish tones that run up from the palate up around the eye, which helps to highlight the eye. You can see inside the eye, actually, there is a little bit of a reddish coloration, as well as a yellow eye and a black pupil, so that is really beautifully painted right there. Very nice and precise as far as the paintwork goes. And then one area that I really quite like is if you look down here under the eye socket, there's like a variation of like a pinkish wash almost that seems to have been applied to the figure, and you can see it run here out the course of the side of the head, and it really makes that detail pop right there in the face, and I think that was a great choice on the part of I-Toy, including some nice tones of like pink with a wash that makes the detail pop beautifully. You also have a nice variation of green here for the lower jaw, as well as a nice dark wash down here, so that as well gives the figure quite a bit of realism and an overall beautiful lifelike appearance. The jaw is articulated. We have kind of a bright pink on the inside of the mouth, which it wouldn't have been my first choice as far as coloration goes, but it actually does look pretty nice on the figure. I will say it makes the mouth stand out and definitely looks striking overall. You can see the tongue in there is also the same coloration as everywhere else that we see inside the mouth, but the teeth are painted beautifully. Like the teeth are all sculpted individually, and every tooth is painted so nicely, even on the lower jaw. It's a little hard to really get over onto this side of the head due to the positioning of the body, but you can see that the teeth are really nicely and very carefully painted throughout the entire mouth of the Dilophosaurus, and they're also painted with a nice off-white, so they have an even more realistic appearance to them. You can also see up here on the top of the head that there as well is that kind of pinkish wash, and with the way that that pinkish wash, if my camera would stay focused on it, with the way that that pinkish wash has been applied, it really makes each and every scale pop so beautifully. As you start to lead back into the body, you can see some nice variations of greens and whites and blacks as well. And again, it becomes very reminiscent of the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park as far as like the design and the coloration of the figure. There's also been a nice light gray dry brushing over the majority of the areas of black. And you can see that once we get back here into the body, you can definitely pick up on that nice gray dry brushing. And another thing that I really like is that you can actually see quite a few variations of greens. There's not just one solid tone of green. You have lighter and darker shades of green that you can see throughout the entire figure that just transition back and forth really nice and naturally, giving it, again, a very realistic appearance as far as the skin tone goes. The underside sports a nice white coloration, and you can see that that as well does have a really nice wash included, so that the detail in that aspect pops beautifully as well. The nails are painted with a black, like you can see here on the hands, very nicely and very carefully painted. You could see even more of that wash here on the underside of the Dilophosaurus in that white area. You could see a little hint of red as well in the stomach region, like a very light red, almost bordering on a pink. And again, some more of that really nice coloration with the greens and the nice wash included. You have more of that black that runs down the front of the leg. Again, very Jurassic Parkish as far as the paintwork goes. And you can see more of like those hints of like pink and stuff right here in the back of the thigh. So that pinkish wash does show up in quite a few different areas. You can see it down here as well as you run through the course of the figure. And then as we lead out the length of the tail, again, we have all of those blacks and whites as they kind of squiggle and just design all over the Dilophosaurus. And it just looks super, super nice, very appealing to the eye. So in my opinion, this is actually a nicer version than the original version of the Dilophosaurus from I-Toy. I really, really love the paint job that they've given this newest version, and it's definitely a gorgeous interpretation of a Dilophosaurus. As far as a size goes for our Dilophosaurus, it is not a very large model, but it's not super tiny either. You were looking at right around the 7 3/4 inch range, roughly. May not look like that from your angle, but I'm looking at it straightforward. That's definitely what it's appearing to me to be, or around the 19.5 centimeter range, and for a height just under 4 inches, or around the 10 centimeter area. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line. And in comparison to the Dilophosaurus, you could definitely see that, as I was saying, it's not a super large figure. Definitely a bit on the smaller side, but it's, again, a Dilophosaurus. You don't expect anything super huge. It's actually similarly sized, I would say, to the Rebor Dilophosaurus. And to show you that aspect, here is one of the two Rebor Dilophosaurus in comparison to the I-Toy version. And you can definitely see that once these two are together, first of all, they look really cool together. They honestly look like, if I can get my Rebor version to stand, it usually doesn't have any type of standing issues, but they definitely look like they're part of like that same group, part of the same pack of Dilophosaurus, especially with this one kind of having a Jurassic Park inspired paint scheme, and obviously the Rebor version being very Jurassic Park inspired. They just look super cool together. And although I don't have the base out currently, here is the original version of the I-Toy Dilophosaurus in comparison to the newer version of the I-Toy Dilophosaurus, and you could definitely see a very big difference as far as the coloration goes. However, it almost makes it look like it's a male and female, as the newer version has a bit of a flashier, brighter color scheme, sort of insinuating more of a male, and the previous I-Toy version has a good bit of a darker paint scheme, obviously more insinuating a female, although it does have a bit of a hard time standing sometimes. I kind of want to get a comparison, there we go, of the two of them from this angle. You could sort of see how cool they look. The original version is definitely a gorgeous version of a Dilophosaurus as well. I'm a huge fan of that initial version from I-Toy, but I really, really like this newest version, I think, just a little bit more. So this second variant of the I-Toy Dilophosaurus is definitely a really, really fun figure. And again, in my opinion, just a little bit nicer than the original version. Not by much, honestly, because that original version really is a great figure, and it was one of the very first figures that I had ever seen from I-Toy. Originally, it was like I think it was marketed as a Deinonychus, but it was obviously a Jurassic Park inspired Velociraptor. And then I do believe it was this Dilophosaurus that was second. And I was instantly hooked on I-Toy after originally the Raptor, but then this Dilophosaurus really sealed the deal. So to have now a new version of it re-released with a newer paint scheme, sporting a more of a Jurassic Park inspired paint scheme, and a little bit of like I-Toy's own creativity as far as like the head and crest area, I was really intrigued in picking this up, and I'm so happy to now have it in my collection. And I am also just as happy to state that it looks beautiful here in person. A really, really nice looking paint scheme and paint application. It is just very nice and very lifelike as far as the actual application of the paint. Like, it genuinely looks like the body color of the Dilophosaurus, which is a huge compliment to I-Toy as far as the application of the paint. And they've done a great job of utilizing washes and nice dry brushing techniques throughout the entire figure to really capture a lot of detail in the paint job of the figure and make it look about as lifelike and realistic as it gets. The sculpt is just fantastic, sporting again a very Jurassic Park inspired look to the sculpt itself, and a really cool kind of a diorama happening before you when you take a look at it, from the fact that it's kind of walking along again and looking like it was just startled by something in the water. I really love that, seeing that it's portraying something that I personally think is really cool. So if you are interested in this Dilophosaurus, it is another incredible I-Toy release and something I really do recommend you picking up. So make sure you check the description, as I will have a link there to everythingdinosaur.com, where you can purchase this for yourself. And make sure you head on over there, purchase this beautiful I-Toy Dilophosaurus. But before you do, make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.